Hello everybody, this is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I am introducing to you a machine that is now ready and available for a new owner. This is the white 769 model. Now I recently did a video called, I think I mentioned it had the approval of good home or what have you, because the 764 was the model that came out right before this one. I suspect this one came out either 1 or 2 years afterwards, but of course the 764 model was a incredibly well engineered machine by the White Company that had everything that you see on this dial here. Let's zoom in for you guys. You have, of course, regular and zigzag stitching. You have buttonhole making. You have blind stitch, and even a multi-point zigzag. So when you first look at this machine, you might think, well, gosh, that's another 764, but it is not. Look very closely, everybody, and if you look at this machine, I'm going to demonstrate it, and at the end I'll show you what's different. It's very subtle, but it is a major change, and it was a further technological development for sewing machines in general, and this was White's sort of a technological tour de force, if you will. I suspect this would have been 1966 or so. And it's a fascinating machine because it, just like the 764, which is really a twin of this machine, it has this really nice bronze and sort of a buff putty color, two-tone color scheme. And it comes in a bronze carrying case. As some of you may recall, the 764 model that I just overhauled and demonstrated, which is currently available, that machine exists or resides in a sewing table. And but if you like the 764, but you would like virtually its twin, but you prefer it in a carrying case, I have one of these as well. I was so impressed with the 764, which is the first one of that model I had come across, that I saw this one several weeks ago and thought, wow, I need to get another one. So when I first saw it, I thought, well, that's just another 764, but it is not. It is the white 769. And see if you can figure out the difference without Googling it. Just take a guess. Just take a look in the images of the video. So I will talk about it just like the 764. You have stitch length control. You have reverse, which is basically just a push knob. You have zigzag width control. Right now I have it on the widest setting, and of course you'll push in and move this lever over to 0 for straight stitching. And of course you can lower the feed dogs. Now, unlike the 764 model, which has basically the same exact bobbin plate, if you look at this one on the 769, it says electronic control, and it's got this little atomic symbol. Remember, in the 60s, the space race and nuclear energy, the whole notion of the atomic age was very it was the most advanced science for the time, and people wanted to make an association. It seems kind of strange today, but back then they wanted you to know that, hey, we've got the latest technology. And those of you who figure out the very subtle but important difference between this model and the 764, you will understand why it was a big deal. So, as I've mentioned to you all many times when I'm talking about Japanese-made sewing machines from the 1960s, 50s, late 50s, but really the 60s is where they really come into lots of different features with multi-stitch capability, as I was just showing here on the dial. And one of the things that you see is the motor, or the RPMs of the machines, get faster. So while I can certainly sew slowly with this machine, you have the option of sewing much more quickly than machines had sewn, say, in the early 1900s, or let's say the 1930s, with the electrical sewing machines having been introduced in the late 20s. You really have some advancements. Of course, this machine has the same 1.3 amp motor as does the 764. that I showed you all in a video about a week ago now. So you might think, gosh, he's doing another one 764. These are great machines, and if I ever get a chance to pick one up and overhaul them, I do. But after, what is it, almost 9 years now, I got a 764 and now the 769. So without further ado, let's do some sewing. I want you all to see how this machine stitches. And I've got it set up right now for wide zigzag. And I think what I'll do is come over and make myself another row here. Adjust my tension just a bit. And we will pull up our needle, and I'm going to shorten the stitch length. I'll zoom over here so you guys can see me doing that. Of course, you want your needle pulled up, because with zigzag, if you have the needle down, you will end up torquing or warping the fabric if you do that when you change your width. So let's come all the way over to 2 and let the machine show us what it can do here. Actually, I may have misspoken. I was adjusting the length, excuse me, not the width. And I can go faster. You can go faster still, but I want it to at least be noticeable to you guys. And now we'll get ourselves another, let's get ourselves another row here, and I think what I'll do is I'm going to take my zigzag, and again, these little this is a lever, and it's locked in. You push on these 2 side pieces and you swing over, and you are set up for straight stitch. So we'll go ahead. Let's see, I'm going to get a long stitch again, but straight. And I'll just hit reverse to do lock in my stitches. So let's take this out and I'll show you all what this machine has given us stitch-wise. Now, take a look at this knob here on the right. Now, just like the 764, this model has the feed dog drop. I can't remember if I mentioned that. High, low, and down for free motion work. But look at this knob here. This knob is unique to the 769, and it sits just to the right of the feed dog adjuster. Let's see, let me stop the video here. I'm going to change my camera angle for you guys. Okay, and now you can see what I was speaking of. This button, or it's actually a dial, is called electronic control. Now, right now it is set on the highest speed, which is where you see the C right here, and it's all the way to the right, and when it stops, you stop turning. If I start turning the knob, I can turn it all the way this way, and if I do, and I'll just turn it again until it stops, and it stops at about, I'm going to say that's about 7 o'clock, so it doesn't spin all the way around. But this is a slower speed. Now, it's kind of interesting. What they did was they did something that sort of similar to what the Necki company had done about 10 years earlier. They started using electronics to be able to control the flow of electricity to the motor. And what that allowed people to do was not just slow needle control, because you can do that. This machine has wonderful needle control, even when I had it on the high speed. But what you'll notice is no matter how much you floor it, it will only go so fast. And that may have something to do, it may have been marketed to people for having better control over their sewing. It also might have, had something to do with needle power. That has been the case with other machines, some of the other machines that had I don't know if it's voltage. I honestly don't know the details of how they did this, but they used some form of capacitor to allow kind of an override on the speed of the machine, and this had to do with how the motor got its electricity. So it's really this was state of the art. You know, this was a new feature and a pretty significant one, and of course this model would have sold for more than the 764. And if, you know, White was wanting to do that, then they had to have something. They couldn't just say, well, we've got the 764 again, we want to charge you more money. But again, now you understand why these electronic control. You know, electronics has a lot to do with the age of transistors. Remember, the transistor radio comes out in the 1950s. And so we've gotten away from vacuum tubes and radios, and that electronics made its way into the speed control for things like sewing machines. And of course, eventually the transistors would give way to, one day, to the microprocessor that we now rely on for all of our computers. But there you have it, guys. That is the 769 White sewing machine. She can do blind stitch. She can do zigzag. And remember, at this time, home sergers did not exist. And so having zigzag was really important. It still is today. Many of you who have newer machines will use zigzag, but maybe not to the degree that it would have been used when it first came out. And of course, after Neki had introduced zigzag in the late 40s, early 50s, by the 60s, of course, the Japanese are making zigzag machines all day long. And they would eventually take over the sewing machine manufacturing industry pretty much until the 1970s. By the late 70s, Japan was moving their production to Taiwan, and of course today most of them are made in China or somewhere in Asia. But this is one of those great machines, and just like the 764, it has the built-in handle. It has a fantastic clutch mechanism, by the way. That's the other thing I wanted to mention, is of course you will recognize the White style bobbin winder. It has a really wonderful, powerful spring. You flip it up, and of course you're ready to engage the bobbin winding tire. Now traditionally, people would of course hold the hand wheel, turn the clutch knob toward them just a bit, and that would disengage the needle in the drive shaft and they could wind a bobbin. But with this machine, it is built in. When you move this lever for bobbin winding, it on the inside, unlike the 764, this model moves a spring-loaded lever that automatically disengages the needle. So it's, again, this is the evolution of things like bobbin winding, which had really not changed in, I don't know, 75 years. And they finally started making changes here. You would also see this on the Kenmores that came out in the 1970s, where they would have a clutch, I guess you would call it a clutch, an adjusting knob on the center of the hand wheel, and you would pull it out to disengage the drive shaft so you could wind your bobbin, and you'd push it back in for sewing. So again, they were starting to make these changes back then, but here it is, circa 1966, state-of-the-art technology. And again, the Neki company had used it. Later, by the way, just a few years later, like say 67, 68, the White company would change the shape. They had a number of models like Singer did, and this electronic knob would, if you had the Ultra Deluxe model, that knob often found its way up to the top. And there was no handle, it was just a sort of a flat top. And you would see a little dial like this that you could adjust for motor control. But again, it would move to the top. And some of you may have those. But anyway, thank you for watching this. If you are interested in taking a look at this machine, feel free to contact me at the posting. I will have photographs of the overhaul procedures that were involved. And there'll also be a link to the video from the posting. And I appreciate you all watching. It's been about a week since I had a video up, and trying to get some more memory for my computer and my camera so I can start making videos again. And so stay tuned, I will be having more. And I haven't forgotten those of you who were asking about both the felt wick for the Singer 66s, 99s, 185s, and also the motor series, because I have a 301A black Slantomatic Singer, and I'll be taking the motor out of that one and showing you all how to do that. It's mercifully simple compared to some. And so we got, like I say, future videos coming up as we move into the rest of the summer. Thanks again, everyone, for your support of the channel. It's been a remarkable evolution. And anyway, if you have one of these, it doesn't have to be a 769. If you have any machine that has a motor control feature where you can control the speed of the motor with the touch of a dial, let me know. Let me know if you have one and if you like it, if you find it helpful or not. And we will see you in the next video. Take care.